From the state capitol in Springfield. From Decatur, Champaign, and Central Illinois. From the nation. Out around the world. This is Fox 55 Reel-to-Reel News. The news you can trust.
In Chicago today, Governor George Ryan received the long-awaited report of the commission he appointed to study the fairness of the death penalty in Illinois. There were more than 80 recommendations, including creation of a statewide panel to review decisions by prosecutors to seek the death penalty, banning capital punishment for defendants who are mentally retarded, no death sentence based on testimony of a single eyewitness, accomplice, or jailhouse informant, videotaping of homicide interrogations, and automatic review of death sentences by the Illinois Supreme Court. Commission member Tom Sullivan, a former United States attorney, said the current system is in drastic need of repair.
In what's known as the Ford Heights 4 case, the police were given the names of the 4 actual killers and rapists within a few days after the event, but failed to check it out. And it took a young journalism student about 20 years later to locate the report and find the real killers. Meanwhile, the 4 defendants served over 70 years in jail.
Governor Ryan had called for a moratorium on the death penalty shortly after he took office, and he explained why.
And in the first 11 months of my term in office, 4 men were freed from death row after being cleared by the courts. And that included a man by the name of Anthony Porter, who spent 15 years on death row for a crime that he never committed. 15 years on death row, all the time knowing that he was innocent and that the state was trying to kill him, and while the real killer was free. And that must have been a real hell on earth for a person like Anthony Porter or anybody that's had to go through that.
The report now goes to the Illinois General Assembly, and Governor Ryan has urged the legislature to enact all the recommendations. A gas explosion and fire on the south side of Chicago. Illinois Guard troops leave for duty in the war against terrorism, and a feature report on a special river that runs through central Illinois. This and much more news when Fox 55 Reel-to-Reel News continues.
In Chicago today, a spectacular gas explosion on the city's southwest side. It happened when a city sewer crew using a backhoe ruptured a 6-inch gas main. 2 workers were slightly burned, and while 3 nearby homes were severely damaged, luckily the residents escaped without injury. The fireball raged on for 3 hours before Peoples Gas Company workers found the right valve to shut down. City officials said that long of a delay was unacceptable.
Anything beyond 5 minutes is unacceptable. We need quick service on shutting this off.
In Chicago today, 400 members of the 66th Infantry Brigade, the Illinois National Guard, prepared to leave for active duty in Europe as a part of the war on terrorism.
I'm going to present to Colonel Totus the state flag of Illinois that he can fly or display prominently in his headquarters, and it's going to let everybody know, who enters the headquarters of the 66th Brigade, that there is a little piece of Illinois in the heart of Germany.
The Illinois citizen soldiers will handle security duty at the military installations in Europe. An earlier call-up of Guard troops provided for security at Illinois airports. Currently, there are nearly 2,000 Illinois National Guard troops on active duty, and more are expected to be called. It is the largest call-up of reservists since the Korean War.
How do you put in the charges in the complaint? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
And do you deny the allegations?
Yes, sir.
In San Diego, 44-year-old David Westerfield pleaded not guilty to the abduction and murder of 7-year-old Danielle Van Dam. Westerfield lives in the Sabre Springs neighborhood where the little girl was abducted a month ago. Danielle's parents, Brenda and Damon Van Dam, were in court today for the 15-minute arraignment.
In Houston today, more defense testimony in the trial of Andrea Yates, who's accused of murdering her 5 children in June of 2001. Psychiatrist Dr. George Ringholz told the jury Mrs. Yates was suffering from schizophrenia and damage to the frontal lobe of her brain, that she was in such a psychotic state she didn't know right from wrong when she drowned her children. Another witness, Dr. Eileen Starbranch, treated Mrs. Yates after a 1999 suicide attempt. She described Andrea as one of the sickest patients she had ever seen. Dr. Starbranch said she had warned Andrea's husband, Russell, that his wife could slip into another psychotic episode if she had another baby. This was before the birth of their 5th child, Mary. Defense testimony continues tomorrow when Andrea Yates' mother and husband are expected to take the stand.
Coming up, the weather report and more of Fox 55 reel-to-reel news.
Today, the state of Illinois declared as disaster areas several central and southern Illinois counties that were hit recently by tornadoes and severe thunderstorms. In Wayne County, 1 person was killed and more than 50 people were injured. There was also damage to homes, businesses, farms, local roads, and power lines. 3 people were killed and several were injured by tornadoes in Johnson, Pope, and Marion counties.
The weather for central Illinois, mostly clear tonight, the low around 49 degrees. Wind southeasterly at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Current conditions at Springfield Capital Airport, humidity 79%, wind speed east at 10 miles per hour, barometer 30.09 inches and rising. 45 degrees at the University of Illinois Willard Airport in Champaign. Tomorrow, partly sunny, the high around 62 degrees. Winds from the south at 7 to 14 miles per hour. Friday night, mostly cloudy with a chance of thunderstorms late, the low around 47 degrees. On Saturday, partly sunny with a chance of thunderstorms and a high around 64 degrees.
The First Lady of Illinois, Mrs. Laura Lynn Ryan, spent some time today with 100 Springfield school children as she launched a grassroots effort to raise funds for the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. The children, many dressed in Lincoln costumes, presented Mrs. Ryan with a check for more than $47,000.
I mean, we have many, many presidential libraries in this country, but none for Abraham Lincoln, who really was one of the greatest presidents we ever had.
Children all over Illinois are dropping their pennies and nickels for the library in boxes provided by the Illinois Bankers Association. 60 years ago, Illinois school children collected $50,000 to help purchase a rare copy of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. It was during the height of World War II, and state government didn't have the funds to purchase the document.
Almost 60 years later, you're donating your pennies to build a fine new home for that copy of the Gettysburg Address and so many other interesting things.
The Abraham Lincoln Library, scheduled for completion in 2002, will house the state's world-renowned Lincoln collection.
The Astrodome in Houston, bottom of the 2nd, Cardinals in Houston. Runners at 1st and 2nd. Jose Vizcaino lines a Garrett Stevenson pitch to center. Jeff Bagwell will come around to score from 2nd, and the Astros lead the Redbirds 1-0. Bottom of the 3rd, bases jammed. Darrell Ward nails another Stevenson pitch down the 3rd baseline. 3 runs would score. Ward is in with a double, and the Astros lead 4-0. And that's the way it went all night. Final score, the Astros hammering St. Louis 10-5. More baseball and more sports coming up on Fox 55 Reel-to-Reel News. In Pittsburgh, great Pirate defense in the top of the first as Fred McGriff drives one to center, but Chad Hermanson makes a diving catch to rob him of a base hit. Then Kip Wells helps his own cause in the second. He lines one down the right field line, scoring Jack Wilson, and the Pirates have a 3-0 lead. Right defense for the Cubbies. Wilson pops to shallow center, but Corey Patterson makes a shoestring catch, and the Pirates still lead 4-0. This play is more in Cubs tradition. Abraham Nunez bounces one to short, but Alex Gonzalez can't handle it. Another unearned run given up by the Cubbies as the Pirates beat Chicago. Final score 5-0. Baseball, Yankees and White Sox. Comiskey Park in Chicago, top of the second, 1-0. The White Sox lead it. Jason Giambi takes Mark Burley deep to right. It's a solo home run, tied the game at 1. We move to the bottom of the sixth, and the Sox hold a 2-1 lead. Roger Clemens looking tough, gets Frank Thomas swinging here. In the bottom of the seventh, though, Kenny Loftman would take Clemens to the gap and left for an RBI triple, and the White Sox lead it 3-1. Then in the top of the ninth, the game is tied at 3. The Yankees with runners at first and third. Giambi again, this time banging a Keith Falk pitch to right for a 3-run game-winning home run. Yankees beat the White Sox 6-3. Stanley Cup playoff action, Wings and Avalanche. Steve Yzerman shot saved by Waugh, but Waugh gives it up, and Brendan Shanahan is there to poke it in, and the Wings lead 1-0. Detroit looking for more in the second. Sergei Fedorov on a breakaway. Over Waugh this time, great save. He holds on, and it remains 1-0. Same score later in the second. Odd man rush for Detroit, but Darren McCarty takes it himself and rips it by Waugh, and the Wings have a 2-0 lead. Dominic Hasek wouldn't give up a thing tonight. Avs on the power play in the third, but Hasek kicks away Joe Sakic's blast, and the score remains 2-0, and that's the way it winds up. Detroit wins it, and the series is tied at 3 with a deciding Game 7 Friday night in Detroit. NBA action, Boston and New Jersey first quarter. Kenyon Martin steals the pass, breaks down the court, running. He gets the slam, and the Nets lead 15-4. Nets up 16 in the second. Terry Kittles misses a 3, but the rebound tip to Jason Kidd, who gets the lay-in, 55-38, halftime lead for the Nets. But Boston makes a run in the third. Paul Pierce pulls up on the break, hits the 3, and the Celtics within 12. Final minutes of the third. Pierce would find Eric Williams backdoor for the layup and the foul. Boston cuts the lead to 1. In the fourth, though, the Nets takes control. Keith Van Horn driving the baseline, hits a tough layup and gets fouled, and the Nets have a 6-point lead, 79-73. And they keep the run going. Kidd drives the baseline, feeds Lucius Harris. Harris misses, but Jay Kidd rebounds and scores. 10-0 Nets run. They lead at 84-73, and they pour it on. Off the pick and roll, Kidd feeds Van Horn. Big 3 from the corner, and Jersey rolls 103-92. At the French Open tennis tournament, a tough day for Anna Kournikova. Takes a spill early on, requires a bandage for a cut on the middle finger of her right hand. Christina Wheeler of Australia, wild card, having no problem with Kournikova, hitting repeatedly to her forehand and eventually putting the match away. Christina Wheeler wins it 6-4 and 6-3.
Fox 55 reel-to-reel news business briefs. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down more than 30 points today, apparently influenced by a negative report on consumer confidence. The Nasdaq lost 3 points. Standard & Poor's 500 index lost a fraction. Keep an eye on the price of Gap stock tomorrow. At the close of business today, the trendy retailer announced a first quarter loss of $34 million. One customer complained the Gap was getting just too expensive. Not everyone is feeling the pinch. Toll Brothers, manufacturers of luxury homes, announced its first quarter profits are soaring and will have no trouble meeting Wall Street estimates this year and next. And former Enron chief Jeffrey Skilling was back before a congressional committee today, this time seated at the same table as his main accuser, Sharon Watkins. Skilling insisted he did not lie during testimony.
Suspects held in the kidnapping and murder of journalist Daniel Pearl. Whatever happened to former Attorney General Janet Reno? We'll tell you that and more when Fox 55 Reel-to-Reel News continues.
In Karachi, Pakistani authorities have tightened security around Ahmed Omar Saeed Sheikh, the British-born Islamic militant who was the main suspect in the kidnapping and murder of Wall Street Journal reporter Daniel Pearl. Police have received phone calls threatening to blow up the jail if Saeed and his fellow suspects are extradited to the U.S. According to a report in today's New York Times, Pakistani President Musharraf told U.S. Ambassador Wendy Chamberlain that Pakistani authorities will extradite the prisoners when their investigation is complete. Pakistani investigators believe Pearl's remains were dumped into the Arabian Sea. The 38-year-old reporter was a veteran with the Journal, and his wife is expecting their first child next summer.
Former Attorney General Janet Reno, now a candidate for governor of Florida, began a 15-day tour of the state today in a red pickup truck. Reno emphasized she is a native of Florida, unlike the current governor, Jeb Bush. And she said her battle with Parkinson's disease won't slow her down.
I talked to my doctors. They said it shouldn't be a problem, and I'm raring to go.
Reno toured a voucher school in Pensacola, but made it clear she opposes voucher systems because they take money from the public schools, which are in desperate need of funds.
Near Seoul, South Korea today, the pilot of a military jet fighter radioed to base that his plane was on fire. These dramatic pictures were taken by a civilian photographer. The pilot was able to eject before the flaming aircraft went into a steep dive and crashed into the ground. The pilot parachuted to safety, suffering only minor injuries. South Korean authorities are looking into the cause of the accident.
When Reel-to-Reel News continues, Illinois remembers September 11th and saving a river that runs through central Illinois. At the state capitol today, Illinois took part in a national memorial marking the anniversary of the terrorist attacks on America. President Bush had asked all the states to conduct the commemoration to honor America and those who lost their lives at the World Trade Center in New York, at the Pentagon, and in Pennsylvania. At precisely 8:46 a.m., the moment the first jetliner hit the World Trade Center, the national anthem was played in Illinois, throughout the country, and at U.S. installations around the world.
The enemies of America thought they could slaughter our hope, shatter our lives, and break our will. They were tragically wrong, terribly wrong.
We shall not forget. We shall not lose sight of the sacrifice that was given to keep freedom alive in America.
God bless America, for in thee we do have our trust. Amen and amen.
The Illinois Department of Natural Resources has undertaken a major conservation program called the Illinois Rivers 2020 Project, which has a goal of protecting the natural lands and waterways of the Illinois River Basin. The program was recently expanded to include the Lower Fox River, one of the most unusual and beautiful stretches of waterway in the Midwest. Two professionals from the Department of Natural Resources took Reel-to-Reel News on a tour of the Lower Fox.
Well, the Lower Fox River is one of the most scenic pieces of the Fox River. The Fox River starts in Wisconsin, and it comes into Illinois at McHenry County at the Chain of Lakes. goes through Kane County, and then Kendall County, and then LaSalle County, and it then ends up at the Illinois River down in Ottawa. And this is by far the most scenic piece of the river. It has cliff communities that we don't see up in the upper part of the Fox. Those are relic communities, boreal forest type communities that you normally see in Wisconsin. It's cooler. The plants are like a little bit more moisture, and that's why we see different things growing on the bluffs here than we would see up a little bit farther north.
Fox 55 reel-to-reel news for Thursday, May 30th, 2002. Thanks for being with us.